Hello, everyone. I'm Kitty Bradshaw, and I'd like to welcome all of you to Healthy Eating, the Five-Element Way, first session of our Telinar. So for the next 20 minutes, I'll be presenting important information about how your health can be improved and maintained by balancing the tastes and energies of the food you eat. And first of all, before we get going, I'm going to just give you a brief overview introduction. Five-element eating is probably a new way of eating for you, and yet, for the people of East Asia, it's the way they've been eating for thousands of years. You'll probably be surprised to hear that you've been enjoying the five-element way of eating too without realizing it, and that's been when you've eaten at Chinese, Japanese, Thai, or other East Asian restaurants where the recipes are almost all based on the five-element way. The reason I'm introducing it to you here in more detail is because I've found it to be vitally important to my health and my family's health. So my goal for this seminar is to introduce you to this ancient approach to balancing the tastes of the food you eat and to interest you in the idea of using food to improve and maintain your health. And this is the first of 4 of these phone seminars, which will focus on the relationship between eating and health. A couple of logistics before we launch in. I'm going to be speaking for the first 20 minutes, and then the last 20 minutes of this session will be an open time for you to ask questions. While I'm speaking, the conference will be muted, meaning that you can hear me, but I can't hear you. When it's time for questions, I'll tell you how to unmute your line so that I'll be able to hear what you're asking. Also, this seminar is being recorded, so don't worry if you miss something I say or need to hear it repeated. You'll be able to go back and listen again at your leisure. So, enough of the beginning. Let's go ahead and get started. First, a bit about your body and how it works. Your body is an amazing interconnected network of organs and channels through which energy flows. When your body's energy is flowing smoothly and fully, think of it being able to get everywhere it needs to go, that energy, then that's called being in balance. And when your body is balanced, it's healthy. So if we agree with that particular way of looking at energy and balance, what does it take for your body to be balanced and healthy? Well, just like a car's engine needs clean burning fuel to get the energy it needs to get you where you need to go, you need food that does the same thing for your body. The food we eat is one of the essential sources of our energy. So a very important aspect of eating has been brought to the world by the ancient Chinese. They understood that the body is made of 5 different energies, and the balance of these 5 energies is essential for us to be healthy. So we need to eat foods which replenish these 5 energies, and we need to eat them in a balanced way. So having energy, we often think of it as being energetic, is important because with energy we do what we want to do, and our bodies can perform all the functions for us that they need to do for us, like digesting our food, bringing in the next breath, lots of different functions. So each day of life that we use energy, each day we need to replenish it. So we need to eat foods that replenish the 5 energies, and there is a particular taste of food that goes along with each of these energies. So let's look at the 5 different tastes of food, and we can start learning how to include them in our diet. How do you know which food provides which taste? The answer is fairly straightforward and easy. You taste it. There are 5 different tastes, as I've mentioned, and they are spicy, salty, sour, bitter, and sweet. All foods anywhere in the world are in one of these taste groups. And how do you know which taste group a food is in? You taste it. Here's some examples so that you can sort of categorize in your head what I'm talking about when I use these words, spicy, salty, and stuff like that. So in the spicy group, you have foods such as, and this is by no means all of them, basil and mint. Many of the culinary herbs, as these two are in the spicy group, spices, and peppers, hot ones. So those all fall into spicy. Then in the salty group, we have foods that have salt added. It's pretty obvious, like pretzels and stuff like that. And also foods like salted butter, different. There aren't a huge number of foods in the salty category, but they taste fairly salty. Going on to the next group, sour. One of the best examples here is sour citrus. Lemons, limes, grapefruit, not oranges. They're actually sweet. So it's these sour citrus. And then most cooking oils fall into the mildly sour category. Also, moving on to bitter, we have really common things that most people are familiar with, coffee. And, of course, that would be black coffee without anything else added, fairly bitter. Tea, also bitter. Avocado, also a bitter food. And cauliflower. Lots of the cauliflower relatives like broccoli and Brussels sprouts, they're also in the bitter group. And finally, we come to sweet. So we have vegetables in the sweet category like beets and carrots, and there are lots of others. And then also in the sweet group, you have grains, rice, wheat, etc. And then, as we all know, there are all the super sweet, refined sugar products like things you get from a bakery. So that's the sweet group. So there you have a few examples of the kinds of things that are meant by these spicy, salty, sour, bitter, and sweet labels. There are more of those, and again, the thing to do is remember to taste so that you can determine which taste some food has. So the rule of thumb about these tastes, in order to balance what you're eating, is to have all 5 tastes in each dish that you eat. So let's take a look at that with a specific example. Say you like to eat oatmeal in the morning. If you put some cooked oatmeal in your mouth and chew it, you'll notice that it's mildly sweet. And that means you need 4 other tastes to combine with it to balance it. So let's add some salt. So if you mix that up and you chew that, then the taste is mildly sweet still with a little bit of salt. You can taste both. So which tastes are left? Bitter, sour, and spicy. How do I complete this to get balance? Well, my personal preference would be, for the bitter taste, I'd like to add some toasted sesame seeds. For the sour taste, I prefer dried sour cherries. And for the spicy taste, I like cinnamon. So if I put all those things in my oatmeal, I'm going to have all 5 tastes included. And then, of course, the obvious question is, so how much of each of these things do I have to add in order to get balance? And the answer, again, lies in tasting it. You add some of each taste, you mix, and you taste it. If any one of the tastes stands out, it's not balanced. For instance, if I added too much cinnamon, I would taste mainly cinnamon, and that would be a clue to me that it's not balanced. So the rule of thumb here is when you arrive at balance with a particular food like this, no single taste should stand out. They should blend together. And what's the reaction that you have to eating something where all 5 tastes are blended together? It tastes good. Nothing sort of distracts you. It all blends together. So I'm going to ask a question which I think some of you may be asking yourself, which is, why go to all that trouble? Is that really worth it? And I have to say to you, yes, yes, and again, yes. Your body is wired to run on these 5 energies, which it receives through the 5 tastes. The food you eat balances your body every day, or it doesn't if it's not balanced. So you have a choice. You can feel good and energized by combining and balancing all 5 tastes, or You can feel heavy, achy, lacking energy every day. It's your choice. I have to tell you, I've been eating this way for years, and I guarantee you it's been and remains worth my time because of the energy I have every day. So there are obvious things here that kind of are obstacles. Let's just look at a few of them. There are things that may make this hard for you to do, and probably the most common one is you just don't have time. Another one is don't have the energy. Maybe your job is too demanding. Maybe your family responsibilities are too demanding. Maybe your school or university is too demanding. There's just not enough time for all that you already have going on. Let me assure you, this is worth it. I wouldn't be taking my time talking to you about it if I wasn't convinced that it's worth it. I wouldn't be eating this way myself if it wasn't worth it. I'm going to ask you to just try it. Take some time. Start to learn about this way of eating, and I guarantee you, you'll be very happy that you did. So I want to return for a moment to the oatmeal. So now that you're willing to give this a try, you may have been asking yourself, how did she know what taste all those foods were? And that's a very good question. The bottom line test for identifying the taste of any food is always, what does it taste like to you? Chew it, then decide how it tastes to you. Not everyone is used to doing this. We often don't taste our food at all because we are so distracted while we're eating. And I suggest you begin to change that. Tasting your food is very important for many reasons. We'll look at some of those reasons in upcoming sessions. For now, just remember, chew. It's in the process of chewing that you'll begin to taste the food. It may come as a relief for you that until you get better at tasting your food, there's another way to determine the taste of foods. There are charts which you can refer to, which list most of the foods that you usually eat. They can be found in our online course called Healthy Eating the 5-Element Way. In it, you'll see 17 video tutorials, 18 articles, question and answer forum, and lo and behold, the charts, which can help you look up the tastes of the foods you're eating. I'll include a link to the course in my next email to you. And if you go there, there's also a free video where I explain the course in more detail. And, of course, if you want to stay with the chew and taste method, that works perfectly well also. There's one other topic that I want to introduce before finishing up today's session, and that's the subject of food cravings. Craving particular kinds of food is a very misunderstood subject. Many people think that a craving is something that you should indulge in, and usually the opposite is true. Here's a new way to think about a craving. A craving is a message from your body about something that it needs. For instance, if each afternoon you crave something sweet, you can think of this feeling as a message from your body that it needs more energy because it's tired, which makes sense from your body's point of view because sweet food will boost its energy level, but only for a short while. The problem is that if you indulge in the sweet food, then you crash not long afterward. So it's not a good solution in general to feed that sweet craving or any food craving. From the 5-element eating perspective, each of the 5 tastes is associated with a particular organ. For instance, if you're craving something salty like salted potato chips, that's your kidney's way of saying, we need help. If the craving is for something spicy, like hot salsa, for instance, then the lungs are in need of energy. So a craving is a message which we have to learn to translate. If you indulge in a food you're craving, you may be making the organ which sent the message weaker after the short-term effect of the stimulation subsides. And we're going to look at this in more detail in the next phone session. For now, here's a rule of thumb about cravings. Don't indulge in cravings. If a craving comes up, try to understand what your body needs. For example, if you're run down at 3 p.m., what should you do? You have choices. On one hand, a shot of caffeine, or perhaps, on the other hand, a balanced snack that would give your body a healthy and therefore happy boost. Something to keep in mind. If you find yourself craving something sweet, which is a very common experience, try eating something that contains a small amount of protein and see if the craving subsides. Things like nuts or even a little bit of some sort of snack meat or something. You'll be amazed at how much and how easily you can affect your health once you've understood how to eat the 5-element way. And I'll be revisiting this again in upcoming sessions. So winding up here near the end of our 20 minutes, I've got a recipe for you. I'm going to be giving you a recipe in each of the Telinars, and this one is a soup, and it's beet soup because beets are seasonal. They're in the market right now, and I think you'll enjoy it. So rather than go through the whole thing with all the cooking instructions and everything, I'm going to post it on the website, like I said, and I just want to go through the ingredients here because this will give you another example of how to balance the foods that you eat. So here's the list of ingredients, and I'm going to give you the taste as I go through them. First of all, most obviously, you have beets, and they're in the sweet group. Second of all, you have shallot, which is in the spicy group. There's a little bit of oil, which is a sour taste. Then there's fresh lemon juice, which is decidedly sour. You'll be adding a little bit of salt. And I have as an optional ingredient some miso. If you're familiar with that ingredient and it sounds like something you'd like to try, I think it adds a nice heartiness to the soup, and that would be salty. And then there's the beet greens or any other kind of leafy greens you want to add like chard or kale, and those are all bitter. So what you have here is all of the different tastes involved in this recipe. What you would want to do is make it up, taste it along the way if you like as you're adding things, and make sure that for your palate, for the way it tastes to you, that no particular taste stands out, that it all is balanced. And like I said, you can get all the cooking instructions on the website. So in wrapping up, there are 3 things that I want to suggest to you to consider doing over the upcoming days, weeks. First one, chew your food. Pay attention, actually start to spend some time chewing in an aware way. Secondly, taste the foods that you eat, and this will be facilitated by the chewing. So that will be a really helpful thing for you to start to notice the taste of the various foods. Thirdly, pay attention to cravings so that you can start to understand what your body actually needs. Is it energy? Is it something else? So those are the 3 things, chew, taste, and pay attention to cravings, that I recommend that you work with between now and the time that we get together again so that you can make some headway and start to move more into the balance and the health that this way of eating can deliver so nicely. So I'm going to open this up now to questions, and I will ask you, when you ask your question, if you would please give your name and then ask your question. That way I can sort of see what I can address you by name, which I would like to do. And we'll just see who wants to ask something. So in order to raise a question, you need to select on your telephone keypad 5* in order to raise your hand, and then I'll be able to unmute your line, and I'll be able to hear you, and we can talk about your question. Then I'll mute your line again and unmute it for the next person. So why don't we just sort of open it up, and anyone who has a question, go ahead and ask, or go ahead and do 5*, and I'll unmute your line. Hello?
Hi, I'm Franklin, and I want to say thank you.
Okay, Franklin, thanks a lot. I appreciate your comment. Hopefully this will be useful info for you.
Yes.
Good. Thanks a lot. Anybody else? So maybe you have a question that you're thinking of, but may take you another minute or two. I'm going to actually, looks like somebody else is raising a hand. Hello?
Hello, this is Brian. How are you?
Hi, Brian. I'm doing well. What can I talk to you about?
Well, I was curious, this five spices or 5 tastes in cooking, is it unique to Asian food, or is it also used in, say, Italian or Mexican food? I'll take my call off the air.
Great, thanks. So Brian wants to know if there are other types of ethnic sort of foods that incorporate this 5 taste sort of aspect. It's an interesting point. I think what you'll find is that by approaching these different cuisines from a 5-element perspective, that in fact they do incorporate a lot of this. I don't think it's intentionally necessarily. They don't have, to my knowledge, the same conceptual sort of framework that the Chinese came up with. However, there is often a balance in the foods. And so if you look at, say, various recipes, and this is one of the things I'll be suggesting to you actually in upcoming Telinars is I'll be giving recipes where I look at other sorts of cuisines. For instance, Thanksgiving is coming up, and one of the things I like to do is to take Thanksgiving recipes and say, okay, how balanced is this? And we look at the different ingredients and say, okay, is something missing? And if so, what's missing? Which tastes are missing? And you can do this with Mexican, you can do this with Italian, like you were asking about, and say to yourself, okay, is something missing? And what you do, if something's missing, is then you find a way to include it, either in that dish or as a side dish, so that at your meal or at the time that you're eating, you actually have all 5 tastes. And that way, your body is getting everything it needs. And that way you won't be cruising through your kitchen looking for something to eat soon after dinner because you didn't have all the 5 tastes that you needed to have when you were eating. So that's one of the things you can avoid. So hopefully that answers your question and gives you a little bit more insight into how to approach some of those other types of dishes you were looking at. Anybody else? Looks like somebody else has a question there.
Hi, this is Marilyn.
Hi, Marilyn.
Hi. Are you indicating that during the course of the meal, should each food have those 5 elements in it, or throughout the whole meal, everything included in that meal?
Great. Thanks for clarifying. This is what I call a clarifying question. Yes, the optimal, the best that you can possibly get is having it in each dish, having each dish be balanced according to the 5 tastes. That's optimal. But if that's not achievable, and it isn't for some, sometimes, then having each meal, each time you sit down to eat, or each time you engage in eating, having all the various different dishes come into one balance as representing all 5 tastes. I'll give you a quick example. Even in Eastern cooking, there are dishes which are particularly hot, like have a lot of garlic, a lot of spice in them, that kind of thing. They are not completely balanced on their own. They don't have often the sweet taste involved. And so what you do is, to balance that, is you add like a yogurt sort of a dish, which not only cools the spiciness, because dairy tends to do that, but it also represents the sweet taste, which is often not part of the dish that you've actually cooked. So you use side dishes and other sorts of ingredients to balance at the meal if you don't have it balanced within each dish.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Thanks a lot. So we have a few more minutes. I don't know if anybody else has a question or anything else you'd like to add. Okay, I'm going to give you a question that often comes up as a result of this kind of discussion of food, and that is, can I lose weight doing this kind of eating? You know, what does it do in terms of, you know, weight loss? And the answer is multifaceted. The simple answer is, sure, it helps you lose weight because it's a way that your body runs more efficiently, more effectively. There are a few caveats here. The main one being a lot of whether you will be able to lose weight eating this way or not depends on how efficiently your digestive system is working. If your digestion is, say, sluggish or lacking in some way, not really working very smoothly or effectively, then even eating this way may not give you the kind of weight loss that you're actually looking for. So the condition of your digestive system will determine a lot about how, regardless of any way of eating that you try to lose weight, whether or not you can. Another thing about losing weight, which is really interesting, is often we have in our heads a particular image or a particular way that we want to feel or a particular way we want to look. And that may not necessarily be all that healthy for our bodies. So health is really allowing your body to do what it does for you in as balanced and energized a way as possible. And it may not necessarily match your kind of mental image of how you're supposed to look. And so that's another thing that it's important to look at when you're looking at health is how are you really defining it and what is health for you? So another, those are really important factors to consider when you're thinking about losing weight because there's just more to it often than just dropping a few pounds. There's more going on. So we've pretty much come to the end of our time here. And what I'd like to do is close things out by saying thanks very much for your participation and your questions. I want to let you know that we'll be doing this again, and we'll be communicating to you when it will be happening, so hopefully you'll be able to tune in again. And also remember that the website will have the recipe for you, the beet soup recipe, as well as instructions on how to return to this recording or to recommend that someone you know come to listen to this recording since we have captured it and it will be available. So that's also going to be available on the website. So I'm going to close things down here. Thanks very much for your time and your effort, and I'll look forward to communicating with you sometime in the near future. Thanks a lot.